委員
Right, members. Well, warm welcome to this joint panel meeting of the TPSP and AJLSP. In accordance with 22K of the House rule, when the panel is holding a joint meeting with other panels to discuss issues of mutual concerns, then the panels will have to decide which panel chairman will be presiding over the meeting. Mr. Ben Chen, chairman of the Transport Panel, and Mr. Gary Chen, chairman of the Security Panel, have agreed that I preside over this joint meeting. So is this agreeable to members? Thanks very much. Unless you have any contrary views, then I'll be chairing the meeting in my capacity as chairman of the joint panel meeting. Right, without further ado, shall we invite the officials into the chamber? Are they on their way in? I'd like to invite the Secretary for Justice, Mr. Rimsky-Yun, Mr. Frank Chen, Secretary for Transport and Housing, and Mr. John Lee, Secretary for Security, to enter the chamber. I'd like to welcome the Secretary, the top secretary, and the two other secretaries and the bureau officials to this joint meeting. We have a large number of members present here today. And first of all, I'd like to invite the SJ to say some introductory remarks regarding the co-location arrangement. Mr. Yun, please, over to you.
舉手定撳掣啊？佢嗰度好多舉咗好耐㗎。OK。
Will you press the buttons? You kept your hands up for a long time. You haven't got a button to press. We have the seating plan in accordance with the House Committee. We're going to use the EBS. Who are not members of neither of the three panels. You will be counted in this arrangement. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Madam Chair, we haven't quite elected the chairman of the joint panel meeting. Wait, let me just finish. I think we start the meeting after the election of the chairman, but the members already had their hands up, and this is not in keeping with the rules of procedure. Right, I don't think Mr. Jeffrey Lam would raise an objection to the use of the device.
記明啦，係嘛？記咗喺中間。好。
All right, let's proceed this way. I've decided that we resort to the buttons. Now, for those members who are not members of neither of the three committees, we will incorporate them. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Well, I saw the panel and all the lights are on. Mr. Yu. Right, we'd like to maximize the time, and members are very used to the buttons in any case. So we'll proceed according to the sequence of the buttons being pressed. Mr. Frankie Yick, whereas Mr. Lam said they raised their hands or they pressed the buttons before we had the chairman elected. By the time I pressed the button, I became the 24th, and it's unfair to me at all. All right, members are very concerned about this. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, I think we will take a decision after you. Well, anything that happened before you became chairman will not be valid. That's the rules of procedure. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, hang on. I don't really want to waste any more time. Members must be aware that we have come to an agreement between the chairman of the three panels that I'll be presiding over the meeting, and I became the member who presides over this meeting. We have come to an agreement. Now that's in accordance with the rules of procedure. And then I announced that we should press the button. I think I have completed all the procedures, and members must be aware of what I am saying here. And the meeting is now in progress. I'd like to invite the Secretary for Justice, Mr. Rimsky-Yun, to say a few words. Madam Chair, together with Mr. Frank Chen and Mr. John Lee, are present here. I'll be making consolidated introductory remarks following the special meeting on the 3rd of August. LegCo, within a very short time, arranged for this joint panel meeting today, so that myself and the two other secretaries would have another opportunity to exchange views with members over this co-location arrangement and listen to what members have to say. I'm grateful to all the members who are present today. If I may take this opportunity to briefly say that this co-location at West Kowloon is legal, it is sensible, it has the advantages that the XRL is really a fast service. Now we have 26 kilometers on this side of the boundary, but as a result of the commissioning, Hong Kong will be connected with the high-speed rail system in the mainland, Guangdong, Changsha, Wuhan, Zhengzhou, and Beijing, and also the Hong Kong-Beijing through train. We connected with Xiamen, Fuzhou, and all the coastal cities. And we connected with this Hangzhou, Fujian-Shenzhen railway, and we're going to be connected with the intercity rail to go between the cities in Hong Kong in the Pearl River Delta. To maximize the benefits, the clearance arrangements should be effective and should be in accordance with the security arrangement. The SAR government is not blindly pursuing co-location arrangement. The Hong Kong and the mainland have looked into various proposals from an objective point of view, and also from the operational point of view, and also from the convenience and also the long-term development point of view. We have come to the view that the co-location arrangement at West Kowloon will be the best arrangement. The separate location arrangement in a conventional way, like the Hong Kong, Guangzhou intercity rail system, the through train system, the passengers will have to complete the departure or the clearance procedures at separate places in Hong Kong and the mainland. And to achieve a co-location, we need the cooperation of the mainland. That the separation of clearance system means that passengers will only be able to complete the clearance procedures at the designated location in the mainland. Let's not talk about the cost effectiveness. Not all stations served by the XRL will have the condition to designate such clearance facilities. Therefore, to designate these facilities for the northbound and southbound passengers along the alignment is really impractical. In other words, if we implement a separate location of the facilities, people will have to alight the train and complete the procedures before they arrive at the destination. Second, we have also looked into the Eurostar model, the co-location arrangement in separate stations. We did consider whether WKS and also a mainland station, we will designate control points to deal with the co-location or the joint clearance arrangement. And the mainland officers will conduct pre-clearance for the northbound travelers, whereas Hong Kong officers would conduct pre-clearance for southbound travelers at the control point on the mainland. The Hong Kong SAR government and the mainland did consider whether at the Shenzhen North Station or Futian Station for the southbound station to be designated, and the southbound travelers will have to use alight at Shenzhen North Station or Futian Station to complete the clearance procedure. The problem with this idea is to require the southbound travelers to alight midway through the journey to complete the clearance procedure, and then embark on the train again before they would be able to proceed to the West Kowloon station. Such an arrangement would bring about inconvenience to the passengers, in particular the senior citizens and those who are laden with heavy luggage, and these would take away the attractiveness of the XRL. At Shenzhen North and Futian stations, they've been in operation for some time. If modification work has to be undertaken to accommodate the clearance facilities, we do need to secure the agreement of the relevant authorities in the mainland. And this will also affect the planning, the design, and the operation of the stations. Third, the SAR government and the mainland authorities did consider on-board clearance. When the train is in motion, the mainland personnel can conduct the clearance procedures, but this is not feasible. This is not simply an observation or the questioning of the passengers, and where necessary we need to inspect the luggage of the passengers. And there is limited space in the train compartments. We're not able to meet the operational needs. We do have the constraints for the personnel and the devices. The timing is another consideration between the WKS and the first mainland station, that is Futian Station. It will only take about 14 minutes. Between Hong Kong, Shenzhen boundary and Futian Station, it is only about 3 minutes. At the present moment, the short-haul train has a seating capacity of 579 seats. Now, to require the personnel to conduct the clearance procedure within such a short space of time, it is operationally impossible. Now, if during the procedure there are problems with the passengers, then it would impede the journey of other fellow passengers. Fourth, there are suggestions that the mainland authorities can authorize the Hong Kong SAR government to carry out the clearance on behalf of the mainland. That there is a specific stipulation in the law. There is no authorization onto anybody else to carry out the clearance procedure.
Operationally, because of the different systems of control points in the mainland and Hong Kong, it will be difficult to authorize personnel of the other authority to complete the clearance procedures. And this will also involve sharing of information related to enforcement, and this issue is difficult to be dealt with. Having considered different ideas, the Hong Kong SAR government is of the view that it is necessary to introduce co-location arrangement as West Kowloon Station because of the flaws in other proposals, and more importantly, co-location arrangement will unleash the potential of XRL Hong Kong section. Introducing co-location arrangement is not for the sake of short-term expedience. It is for the purpose of enhancing Hong Kong's competitiveness in the long term. Cities in the mainland and also other major cities in Asia are now enhancing their competitiveness. And one crucial element to enhancing competitiveness is to improve the transportation system. The XRL provides a speedy high-speed rail service for passengers. It is also crucial to safeguard the interest of Society of Hong Kong in future. I urge members to support the co-location arrangement. Thank you, Mr. Rimsky-Yuen, for your introduction. Do the other two bureau chiefs like to supplement anything? If not, then I'll open the floor for members to ask questions. We have 27 members who have indicated their wish to ask questions. I hope to give a chance to every member to ask questions. So let's have the first round, 3 minutes, and if you want to have another go, then wait for the next round. Let me specify the time limit first. If we still have some time left, we can have a second round so that each and every member will have their chance to ask questions. We have Ms. Tanya Chan, Claudia Mo, Andrew Wen, Ted Hui, Dennis Kwok, Junior Ho, Leung Chi Chang, Alvin Young, Eddie Chu, Ben Chan, Siu Kao Fei, Gary Chen, Ronick Chen, Jeffrey Lam, Lau Kwok Fan, Wu Chi Wai, Ray Chen, Elizabeth Kwok, Wilson Orr, Pun Siu Ping, Yu Si Wing, Fernando Zhang, Frankie Yik, Leung Yu Chong, Kenneth Leung, Jeremy Tam, and Eunice Yong. But I don't have Starry Lee on my list. Press the button now. Okay? We should have sufficient time. So, Ms. Tanya Chan, over to you. Please start the timer now. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Mr. Yuen. You said that it is upon Hong Kong's request to implement the co-location arrangement. From where have you obtained this message, Mr. Yuen? Madam Chair, if I may. Well, thank you, Ms. Chan, for your question. Since I've taken up this task, my understanding have been that for the XRL Hong Kong section, at the time it was the Hong Kong government which came up with the proposal, it was the Hong Kong SAR government which proposed to look into the idea of co-location arrangement. Looking into the idea, well, Ms. Chan, please allow me to finish. Please focus on the question. Please try to answer her question specifically because she only has 3 minutes. Well, the circumstances were that the Hong Kong SAR government proposed this plan and this study, and all along it was upon the Hong Kong SAR's government's request. So it's just the request from the Hong Kong SAR government, not from Hong Kong people, is that right? Well, in handling the affairs of Hong Kong people, the SAR government proposed this co-location arrangement. How do you quantify support for the co-location arrangement? Please allow Mr. Yuen to finish. Whether or not Hong Kong people support co-location arrangement, since the proposal was announced on the 25th of July, through 2 channels. Well, it's just been 2 weeks. Do you think I did not mention 2 weeks? You studied this proposal for 9 years. And then the SAR government just summarized that you have the general public support for collocation arrangement in just 2 weeks. I think that Ms. Chan has totally misunderstood what I said. We did not say that we only spent 2 weeks in understanding public opinion since the 25th of July in 2 weeks. Well, please, Ms. Tanya Chen, allow him to finish. Please answer my question directly. How do you quantify suggest that there is public support for collocation arrangement, or is it just the government's suggestion? How to quantify? I think these are 2 different concepts. In handling the affairs of Hong Kong people, the SAR government have requested collocation arrangement, and then from now on we will quantify and analyze whether the public supports it. In 2003, the government published a report, a guideline to public consultation. It was published in November 2003. Now we do not have any consultation at all. I want to know from you and from the 2 bureau chiefs why there isn't any public consultation. Well, I think Ms. Chen would understand that the paper sets out the major principles for conducting public consultation. And it also sets out that in the light of different matters, different bureaus and departments can take different approaches in conducting public consultation. Who decides not to do any public consultation? And let me briefly supplement that from the time when we've first voted the idea of collocation arrangement, we have been listening to different sectors of the community, and this by itself is already public consultation. Ms. Claudia Mo. The mainland constitutional law suggests that human rights are safeguarded, but in reality, we are gravely concerned about the situation in the mainland. Just look at Liu Xiaobo, and in Hong Kong, we also have the Causeway Bay Books incident. And Mr. Yun, you once also said that there wasn't any specific counter proposal. And then you make an about turn and suggested that there is no alternative to the collocation arrangement. So please explain why you refuse to conduct a public consultation. You said that you are not blindly pursuing collocation arrangement, but you are showing the people of Hong Kong exactly the opposite. So my question is this. To be more specific, for the collocation arrangement, you mentioned that if a clearance procedure is conducted in Futian Station instead, it will be inconvenient for passengers, for senior citizens, etc. Is that the sole reason for introducing collocation arrangement in Hong Kong, such that the basic law and the one country, 2 systems can be undermined? As the Secretary for Justice, I find this unacceptable. Well, let's say that collocation arrangement can be implemented, but only CIQ should be included. Customs, immigration and quarantine, procedures, and nothing else. Don't talk about enforcement action by mainland officials or civil disputes. Can you do that? Secretary, thank you, Ms. Mo, for your questions. First of all, we definitely are not blindly pursuing collocation arrangement. It is not something new. We have explained very clearly in the paper. But it was only about CIQ procedures. Well, Ms. Mo, would you please allow me to finish my answer? If you don't want me to answer, I can stop here, but I'd like to let the public know my answer to your questions. Yes, Secretary, please. Now, we already explained why the other alternatives are not suitable. And on the point of CIQ, well, even back in 2006, when we dealt with Shenzhen Bay Port, we already conducted a study on the CIQ procedures. And the result was that if only CIQ procedures were involved, there would be different legal complexities and other issues, and law enforcement agencies would not have any laws to abide by. And at that time, there were other suggestions. But Mr. Yun, at that time, when Shenzhen Bay Port proposal was studied, the basic law hadn't existed yet. can you please tell me? Well, your question is very clear. Mr. Yun, would you please continue? On whether we can confine the procedures to CIQ procedures only, I don't think it's directly related to the basic law. We were talking about the overlapping of jurisdictions and the legal and operational issues arising from the overlapping problem. I hope Ms. Mo could understand that these are two different concepts. Mr. Andrew Wen. Thank you, Madam Chair. The XRL incident started in 2009, and back then there were a lot of issues discussed. For example, the most expensive project for the 26-kilometer XRL, and also costing over $60 billion, and the SAR government was being stubborn, and now the train has rammed into the wall. And just now, Secretary mentioned the clearance procedure being conducted in Fujian Station, and I think Ms. Mo is right. If you follow the Shenzhen model, or Shenzhen Bay model, and conduct the clearance procedures there, there won't be any limitations because of the basic law. You talk about the pros and cons, but Madam Chair, can I ask him to answer this question? Can you tell us specifically, especially about designating the MPA in the center of the city, why don't you conduct a public consultation first? What is the reason for not conducting a public consultation? Let him answer your question one by one. Defer to Mr. Chen to take your question. Thank you, Mr. Wan, for your question. In the paper, we explained about the 6 different options, including why the collocation arrangement in the mainland cannot be implemented effectively, because, well, for Shenzhen North and Futian Station, they began operation back in 2013. I want some figures. Don't just beat about the bush. Figures, please, Secretary. Well, but the point is, those 2 stations are already in operations. If you require those stations to be renovated in order to accommodate the facilities for Hong Kong, it will be entirely unreasonable and not feasible. So does it mean that it is just an idea being conjured out of thin air, or is it that have you really contemplated this idea? Have you discussed this idea with the mainland authorities? Well, please let the Secretary answer your question. First of all, this is just a conjecture from today's point of view. As I mentioned just now, as both Shenzhen North Station and Fujian Station are already in operation, I think that Mr. Andrew Wan should be more pragmatic. If you could come up with a feasible proposal, please do tell us. Well, Madam Chair, he hasn't answered my question. All right, I am asking for figures. All right, I understood your question. Wait for your second round, please. I believe that we will still have a lot of opportunities to follow up on this point. Ms. Yun, we're responding to Mr. Wan's question. This is, first of all, not something conjured out of thin air. The SAR government did discuss the proposal with the relevant authorities in the mainland. And second point, the Hong Kong SAR government cannot unilaterally request that the station in the mainland be modified. Mr. Ted Hui, subversion, espionage, leaking national secret, these are all offenses under the national law. And if the collocation arrangement is put in place in Hong Kong, these offenses will also have effect in the West Kowloon Station. Just now, Secretary mentioned that the collocation arrangement is the most reasonable or rational option, but it should not be implemented for expedience, because according to basic law, only matters relating to national defense and foreign affairs can be included in Annex 3 to the Basic Law. Why is it that these offences can be introduced into Hong Kong despite the fact that they are not related to foreign affairs and the defense, Mr. Yun? As we mentioned at the last House Committee special meeting, we will not compromise one country, two systems or go against the Basic Law for the sake of expedience.
This is one of the key principles that we have, and this is the consensus we have with the mainland. Now, Mr. Hui said that he's concerned about the criminal offences. I don't think we should be expressing our concerns in a vacuum. We have to look at the situation. We are well aware that the XRL, the Hong Kong section, is a section linking up between Hong Kong and the mainland. Travelers using the XRL are traveling either into the mainland or traveling from the mainland into Hong Kong in any mode of public transport, whether you are talking about the XRL or the existing through train or even aircraft. When you're entering into the mainland, you must complete the CIQ procedures. You have to complete the arrival clearance procedures. This co-location arrangement, in terms of the CIQ clearance procedures, and also in terms of the system, there are no problems there. Mr. Wei, just a yes or no question. The state secret provoking quarrel and incite trouble, theft of state secret, would this become a problem? Well, if Mr. Hui read the paper, Article 18 of the Basic Law will not apply. Now, you mentioned the defense and foreign affairs. These two elements out of the three elements in BL 18. And these we're not going to, it doesn't fall within Annex 3 of the Basic Law. This is another concept altogether. Mr. Dennis Kwok, I don't have much time. A short question for short answer. Now, for the mainland personnel, when they are operating in this area, do they have to observe the Basic Law? Do they have to act in accordance with Article 3 of the Basic Law and protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong? Yes or no? Secretary? The Basic Law is a constitution, and when the mainland personnel are handling matters, they have to act in accordance with the mainland laws, and these include the Basic Law. So the mainland personnel, they have to observe the Basic Law, don't they? Right? He said short question for short reply. So let's make it brief. Yes, of course, I would like to have a short reply for short question, but if we make it too brief, it might be counterproductive. Now, the situation is when they're dealing with the CIQ procedures, and also when they are discharging their duties to act in accordance with the mainland laws, do they have to comply with the Basic Law provisions? Legally, yes, but they also have to act in accordance with the mainland law in discharging their duties. So they have to observe the provisions in the Basic Law in this leased zone and the West Kowloon. This is a legal requirement, isn't it? Secretary, I think Mr. Dennis Kwok has oversimplified the matter. Well, it's not a complicated issue in the first place. I think this will give rise to a misleading message. Now, there are two different standpoints. I made it very clear that the Basic Law is a national piece of law. You don't have to repeat that. Second, the mainland personnel, when they're discharging their duties, of course, they have to act in accordance with the national law and the mainland law. But we have to make a distinction here. On the one hand, the Basic Law is a national law, but on the other hand, when we are dealing with the clearance procedures for the travelers, they have to act in accordance with the mainland law regarding the clearance arrangement. Now the question is, do they have to abide by the Basic Law? If they fall foul of the Basic Law, will Hong Kong court have the jurisdiction? Secretary, it shows that Mr. Kwok's question is in fact confusing the whole concept. It shows that we have to make a distinction between the two concepts. We have to separate the two concepts altogether. Do they have to abide by the Basic Law, though? I'm asking this for the second time. Secretary, I think Mr. Kwok's question is making the issue more confusing. This is not an appropriate way of approaching the issue. Right? I think we have to take it up with on this on other occasions. Dr. Junius Ho. Well, let me say this. There are other members who might follow on this question, or you may wish to press the button for the second round. Mr. Junius Ho. Mr. Secretary, Article 19 of the Basic Law refers to defense and foreign affairs, and Hong Kong court doesn't have the jurisdiction. On the question of CIQ, I'd like to raise a question for clarification. And I hope that the administration would have the reply, would have the answer there. For the exit and entry control at the boundary, at the West Kowloon Station, of course, there may be problems with terrorism, and there is this element of defense. When it comes to the exit and entry of travelers, it may not be entirely something for Hong Kong. It may involve the consulates. This may fall into the area of foreign affairs. In terms of CIQ, you have the three-step process. Upon reaching agreement, you will have the NPCSC endorsement in Hong Kong will enact domestic legislation. If someone were to file a judicial review under Article 19, how are you going to take full advantage of this provision and clarify the matter to make sure that the joint immigration checkpoint arrangement will be commissioned before Q3 of 2018? I hope you would clarify the matter to the fullest extent possible to assuage public concerns. Secretary, thanks very much for the question, Mr. Ho. Article 18 and 19 of the Basic Law, they are related in themselves. As I said in the paper, we have sought to explain the national law in this area, in particular when it comes to defense and foreign affairs. Now, this provision doesn't apply here in this case. Now, Mr. Ho mentioned anti-terrorism and the consulate arrangement. Of course, we would have regard to this, but our study shows that in this co-location arrangement, these are not the prime areas for consideration. In the three-step process, Mr. Ho suggested that someone might file a judicial review. We like to reiterate our position that we welcome we respect the rights of people to file judicial reviews. There is somebody who has filed a judicial review, and we will act in accordance with the court procedures. Mr. Leung Chi-Cheong. Thanks very much, Madam Chair. The Secretary already told us the various models before coming to the co-location arrangement. And I'm really glad to hear the pros and cons mentioned by the Secretary, and this is inspiring confidence in us about the implementation of these co-location arrangement. There was an opinion poll, I think Hong Kong U poll in Ming Pao Daily, 53% are in favor, and 33.9% were against. I think this is in answer to Ms. Tanya Chen's question about the level of support, and people do have confidence in the one co-location system. People are supportive. Of course, LegCo has to enact the domestic legislation here. I think to raise a question and to make suggestions is only reasonable, and I hope that the Pandams will not be raising objection for the sake of raising objection, and they are really on a collision course with the members of the public. If you are on a collision of the members of the public, you will be suffering in the end. I'd like to put a question regarding security. If we have a designated zone for the mainland personnel to enforce the law, this is the arrangement under this co-location model. If there are criminals, whether it be from Hong Kong or elsewhere in other parts of the world, if they are arrested or caught by the personnel, the mainland personnel, will they be sent back to the mainland for the proceedings? Or will there be any international involvement, and will the criminals be handed over to other parts of the world, or in Hong Kong indeed, will they be handed over to other jurisdictions, or would they be repatriated back to the mainland to start with? Right, defer to Secretary for Security. Right, Mr. John Lee. If there is a criminal on the wanted list, and if he is arrested, we have to ascertain what he is arrested for. Maybe he has committed, or he has broken the mainland law, that he will be dealt with in accordance with the mainland law, and depending on the complexity and seriousness of the case, he will be dealt with accordingly. If the mainland personnel made the arrest through international cooperation, then there is an exchange of criminals arrangement through the Interpol. Hong Kong doesn't have it. If an arrest has been made, they cannot hand him over to us, nor can we hand the criminal over to them. Mr. Alvin Young. Right, to address Mr. Leung Chi-Chung's question, I don't think he should jump to the conclusion about the opinion poll. If in 2 months' time the opinion poll were to change, will the DAB be leading the opposition? Now, I'd like to put this to the Secretary. Do Hong Kong people enjoy the protection under the Basic Law within the station? Secretary? Madam Chair, to answer Mr. Young's question, within the station, the mainland law is enforced, so it would be no different from Hong Kong people entering the mainland port area in the Shenzhen Bay port. I know where Mr. Young is coming from, but I hope that you would understand, you would consider the fact that whether we're talking about the through train or the XRL, passengers will have to complete the clearance procedures when they're entering into the mainland territory. Here, we have the co-location arrangement, and the mainland port area and the Hong Kong port area are housed physically together to make it convenient and efficient for the clearance procedures to be completed. I'm sure that the members of the public will understand this. Mr. Alvin Young, I appreciate Mr. Young did have in mind what I was trying to ask. Article 24 to 42 of the Basic Law refer to the fundamental rights of the people of Hong Kong. The Secretary never answered me between 24 and 42 of the Basic Law, do they apply to the people of Hong Kong within the zone?
Secretary, I think Mr. Yang also understands that when we arrived in the mainland and if we go through the mainland clearance procedures, then the mainland laws apply. As we have explained, this is the arrangement. So, although the Secretary hasn't answered my question, I now have an idea of what's going on in his mind. So when it comes to the basic law safeguarding the basic rights and obligations of the public, then basically it is non-existent when one enters the MPA. In essence, the Secretary is telling us that since you're entering the mainland anyway, you should just give up all your rights 20 minutes before. Don't talk about the basic law because there is no difference if you're departing Hong Kong for the mainland. Secretary, this is the opinion of Mr. Yang. I don't think I need to respond to that. I think that the public can make its own judgment. We all understand what the collocation arrangement is. I think that we can make our own decisions in the light of the arrangement. Mr. Eddie Ju. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to emphasize, first of all, that the public isn't just only concerned about their personal safety because of mainland laws being applied in part of Hong Kong. The problem is the government on this occasion is suggesting that by invoking Article 20 of the Basic Law, the Article 18 of the Basic Law can be circumvented. And this is what is worrying, because at the House Committee special meeting, I recall the Secretary saying that it will not be arbitrary, it will not be out of the blue. So we're asking whether this is the backing that you rely on to invoke the Article 20 of the Basic Law in order to circumvent Article 18. It has to do with the trust in the Beijing government, but from the paper, I can see that it is thinning, because according to paragraph 48 of the paper, it is said that Article 18 has not been contravened because the MPA is legally regarded as outside the territorial boundary of the Hong Kong SAR. Well, if it's already outside Hong Kong, then it will not be contravening the Basic Law. But in December 2015, according to the administration's paper CB bracket 4394/15 bracket 1516, one of the paragraphs suggests that in the future, although the collocation arrangement will be put in place in West Kowloon Station in the future, no area inside the station will be excluded as an area outside the territory of Hong Kong. So with common sense, we can see that these are two conflicting versions. Can you explain paragraph 48 of the paper? Other than the fact that it is legally regarded as outside the territorial boundary of the Hong Kong SAR, is there another aspect such that you can give this explanation which is conflicting with the previous version? There is no conflict between the two versions and no contravention, because as we explained, the area will be leased to the mainland authorities for use. So if it's excluded, we will not be able to lease it, and that also explains that it is not not cession of the land. And if Mr. Ju referred to Article 5.2 of the Basic Law for a specific, Madam Chair, I hope that the Secretary can explain this to me. So legally, it is not regarded as the territorial boundary of the Hong Kong SAR. Is there another justification, Secretary? This is in substance, we are still leasing the area to the mainland because we have not revised the SAR's boundary. in order to for the purpose of legal adaptation and distinction of the two jurisdictions, we put in place this arrangement. And that is why we have the deeming provision as explained in the paper. And I would like to refer Mr. Zhu to Section 5.2 of Cap 591 of the laws of Hong Kong. Mr. Man Chan, Madam Chair, I will be moving a motion in due course. I have distributed the motion to members. I think that many members of the public oppose here. I don't understand, because the objectors are suggesting that the mainland officials will be able to enforce the law arbitrarily in Hong Kong. In fact, the PLA, the garrison, already is stationed in Hong Kong, and they have been in perfect compliance with the laws. And on the contrary, we have people provoking troubles outside their premises. So I think that their suggestion is really unsound, and I think that they are opposing for the sake of it. Because earlier we arranged for a visit at the WKS. They boycotted the visit, citing that because they refused to go because the officials refused to go. But in fact, the purpose of the visit is not to listen to the explanation given by officials. They should just go on a visit and ask questions later. So I think that they are objecting for the sake of objecting, because they are unable to come up with any feasible alternatives. They have been doing nothing but passing criticisms. And even an ordinary student would know that if you object to an idea, you should come up with an alternative. But so far, I haven't heard anything from them. So they are objecting for the sake of it. If you have an idea instead, you should let us know your proposal and let the government know as well. Otherwise, it would be objecting for the sake of objection. At the same time, I urge the SAR government to work harder on explaining the matter to the public. I don't think the collocation arrangement has to do with any legal issue. It's just a matter of trust. How can you instill confidence in the public? Who would take the question, Mr. Chan? Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your questions. Well, we just now heard some moot points being discussed, but we don't think that this will help in terms of the development of Hong Kong. We're talking about the high-speed cross-boundary railway system. What we do today is for the sake of the future, and also for our young people and for the next generation. We therefore appeal to members to be rational and be pragmatic in discussing this proposal, and give our next generation and our young people a chance. I don't think I'm alone in this kind of view. For people who are concerned about young people and Hong Kong's development, well, I can say very boldly that for incumbent members 20, 30 years down the road, you may no longer be here, but we should all work hard for the sake of our young people. And we should have more interactions with the public and make them feel confident about the government, because we're investing in the future for the sake of Hong Kong's development. Next, Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week at the House Committee's meeting, Mr. Frankie Yik of the Liberal Party conducted a public opinion poll, and we said that we would conduct another poll. So between the 2nd and 7th of August, we conducted a follow-up poll. The first question is this. what is the importance of implementing co-location arrangement in unleashing the potential of the XRL. And according to the poll result, 68.2% of respondents feel very important, and 26.3% don't feel that it is important. The other question is this: do you agree that the Hong Kong the XRL Hong Kong section should adopt the model of Shenzhen Bay Port so that mainland clearance officials can conduct CIQ procedures, etc.? And the outcome is that 67.1% were 61.7% in favor of this suggestion, and 3.4% objects to the proposal. Well, public opinion changes all the time, but the point is, the XRL is very important to Hong Kong. A few days ago, I received a call from a resident living in Siu Sai Wan. The resident urged me to support the proposal because Siu Sai Wan is at the farthest end of the Hong Kong island, and every time when I attended the district council meeting, I fought the corners for Siu Sai Wan residents so that the extension line can be constructed. And likewise, the resident told me that if XRL cannot be connected to the mainland's railway network, it would be a big problem. And I'm in the retail and wholesale industry, and in recent years, our business hasn't been good. Well, we would like to make it convenient for mainland travelers to come to Hong Kong so that our whole economy will improve. It is very important. I understand that from the non-establishment camp, they have worries about law enforcement and other legal issues. But we have basic law in Hong Kong. And if this proposal is against the basic law, then right, let's file a judicial review. Some barristers say that if you go in the West Kowloon station, you will be caught and taken up north. And I don't think this is really rational. I'm just here to give my comment. Dr. Chen Chung Tai. About this proposal, I think that this is a proposal of ceding land, and it is also eating into the autonomy of Hong Kong. However, I think that the other members have already raised questions on points about the basic law and other legal issues. I'd like to now talk about Hong Kong people's identity. Now, your saying is that there will be a floor designated as the mainland port area, a leased area in my view, and I think that this should be put on record. It's for your consideration. For example, if there is a mainland expectant mother traveling southward on the high-speed rail, and if she's about to go into labor whilst the train is still in motion, and if the train has already crossed the Hong Kong boundary and enters the West Kowloon station, should the baby be regarded as a Hong Konger or not? Well, if she goes into labor after she enters the West Kowloon station, on humanitarian grounds, she should be sent to hospital for delivery, but she hasn't really gone through the clearance procedures. So how do you explain this? How do you deal with this? Mr. Lee. Now, about Dr. Chang's example, well, this can even happen in Lo Wu. But the point is, she has now reached the center of the city. And what happens if she goes into labor when the train is still in motion? Well, my understanding is that we should refrain from having a dialogue between ourselves, but my answer is this. The crux of the matter is where the baby is born. If the baby is born at the place when the mainland laws apply, then definitely the baby should not be regarded as a Hong Kong resident. And in fact, what you mentioned is already happening in Lo Wu and other VCPs.
Well, if a pregnant woman is in labor within the zone, will she be taken to the mainland? Secretary. Well, as I said, it's happening in Lo Wu as well. Will she be taken to QE or to the mainland? Secretary. Well, let's be practical, Mr. Cheng. If there is a pregnant woman for medical reason, she has to be allowed into Hong Kong. We have to save life, and we have to look at the medical side of the equation. Now, even this simple example shows how ridiculous the situation is. Well, whether we have the co-location at WKS or not, the EC still exists. Right next, Mr. Gary Chan. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, every single day there are hundreds of thousands of Hong Kong people making their way into the mainland to visit relatives, to do business, to travel. The SAR is about the economy, it's about social life. It's not about anything else, as alluded to by the Democratic members. And their speculation stems from the lack of trust in the mainland. There are Pan-Dem members who said that at the West Kowloon Station, only CIQ procedures should be implemented, and there shouldn't be any other jurisdiction that should be exercised. And let me ask you, if only CIQ is allowed, then in this overlapping jurisdiction, what if there are fugitives from the mainland who are descending in Hong Kong, who has the power to make arrest and implement the law? If nobody can make any arrest of these fugitives, will there be any legal lacuna? And this place will become the haven of fugitives from the mainland. Well, there may be some bogus refugees who may find these a very good haven to descend into. Mr. Lee. Thanks very much, Mr. Chen. In this MPA, if there is a criminal, wanted criminal, the mainland personnel can make arrest. If there is an overlapping jurisdiction, it means that the Hong Kong courts can also entertain any challenges. If someone were to make some challenges, I'm not sure how long the legal challenge is going to take. If the challenge is successful, then the mainland personnel cannot make any arrest and send him back to the mainland. And we will be stuck with someone who has not committed an offense in Hong Kong, but who has committed a serious offense in the mainland. And there is a tremendous risk here. We don't have any agreement on the surrender of fugitives. Mr. Chen, you talked about these non-refoulement claimants. From the radio, I heard that these people can be sent back on the same train. Now, at the airport, when a plane is leaving a certain place, there are lawyers who are representing them even before they land. They would lodge a refoulement claim. We cannot send them back on the next flight, because under Hong Kong law we have to entertain the non-refoulement claims. We have to deal with the claims. And at the present moment, each case would take about 2 to 3 years to handle. We have to cater for these particular risks. Mr. Chen Zhenying, at the House Committee, I put a question about the returns. I talked about the commercial land and also the commercial areas and the return in these station area. The question has been answered. In answer to my question, Mr. Chen said that each year the traveler can save 39 billion hours or $90 billion in economic return. Now, for these 39 billion hours, how did you arrive at these figures? Some scholars said that the government has underestimated the situation, and there is a good return even for the trip between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Will the Secretary confirm that there has been an underestimation? The XARL takes people between Hong Kong and the mainland, but the flights are more often delayed. I think the government has not taken into account the hours of delays. You do have these figures. Will you build into the equation the hours of delays in working out the number of hours that we can save? Mr. Chen, thanks very much for the question. Earlier in our paper submitted to the Council, we did say that through the XRL we can save 39 million hours of social value. We did consider the time value. Different passengers would have different time values, and we also had regard to the economic and international situation, and came to the conclusion that each year there will be a savings of something like $90 billion for the entire cycle. Obviously, today we can redo the calculation, but if we make the projection now, we're going to have a higher projection because the time value will go up, but looking ahead into the future, we would focus our attention and our energy to get on with the co-location arrangement and make sure that the XRL, in particular the Hong Kong section, will achieve the maximum benefits. As the SJ said a few moments ago, the co-location arrangement at the West Kowloon Station will be the best model for Hong Kong. And I'm sure, I hope that we will secure a member's support here. And I hope that we can have discussions on the practical scenarios. Now, there may be some scenarios that are very imaginative and they're very exceptional. If we proceed on this line, we're only shaking the confidence of the people of Hong Kong. We would be taking these rare scenarios as the norm. And this is really misleading. I hope that we will be pragmatic in our discussion. Now, for this Hong Kong section of the XRL, we will make the most of it and serve the people of Hong Kong there. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've also received a lot of views from the members of the public. They feel that we should endorse this co-location arrangement at the Council as soon as possible. When the XRL is commissioned in Q3 next year, co-location is a must. Now, most of the people are in support of this arrangement in any case. And I feel that this arrangement is reasonable and sensible. And this is also in line with one country, two systems without violating the basic law. The most important thing is that this will stand Hong Kong people in good stead, the business people, the commercial sector, tourism, and the interaction between the two places in terms of the exchanges of talents and technology. This will be a great deal. Some people said, Madam Chair, that without the co-location arrangement, then we can have a CIQ facilities at each and every station. I know the Secretary has already answered this, but will you tell us once again, if this is the case, what cities are you going to pick? Will the mainland cities be prepared to cooperate? If there are mainland criminals who are traveling to Hong Kong on this XRL, and if they've left the station, but they are picked up as people who have committed serious offense. What are we going to do with this? Secretary, if, let's hope that this will not come to pass, if there is a need for separate location of the CIQ facilities, then the Hong Kong section of the XRL will be compromised in terms of its efficiency, because we can only we will have to stop at these CIQ facilities in the mainland, and we'll have to complete the departure clearance procedure at the mainland stations. Now, this XRL network is supposed to be very efficient, and if this is the case, then the economic benefits will be severely compromised. So this model or this proposal, if you notice the XRL system elsewhere, they will try to provide convenience to the passengers at the entry and exit point, and they're making the journey so much more pleasant. So the co-location arrangement is in line with the practical arrangement. It is making it convenient for the residents, and this is providing good opportunities for the younger generation. Mr. Edward Lau, well, the Democratic members are demonizing the co-location arrangement. I think they are being self-contradictory. Mr. James Toh said at the beginning of the year that the designation of an MPA is legally and technically feasible, and some of the land in the West Kowloon can be allocated to the mainland. One of the ways is to avoid breaching the basic law and also the mainland personnel enforcing the law in this area. It's a matter of confidence. I'm not sure why his confidence had disappeared into thin air. The Pan Dams calling for the administration to conduct consultation. Mr. James Toh, Ms. Tanya Chen said that even if the public were in support, they would still be steadfastly against it. That they are demonizing the whole thing, and they're being self-contradictory, and they're saying that people are liable to being arrested on the site. A site visit has been arranged. People will buy a ticket and complete the clearance procedures, and they'll have to go to different floors, and there will be no scenario of people being arrested. That they missed the site visit, and they also declined to meet the government officials. Like Mr. Ted Hui said, if they are provoking quarrel and inciting trouble, and they are afraid that they will be arrested, now, I advise them not to travel to the mainland then, because once you travel on the XRL, you're traveling into the mainland in any case, Guangzhou or wherever. If I may put this to the Secretary, the Pan Dams are being self-contradictory, and they're demonizing the whole project. Will you be retorting or arguing, advancing your argument against their proposals? Mr. Chen, Hong Kong enjoys freedom of speech. I will respect different opinions. Now, it was said that there is a lack of confidence. Now, we're being modest. We do have confidence. We're determined to implement the co-location arrangement at the WKS. We will listen to the public views and the views of the members here with modesty. We will reflect the views to the mainland authorities. By the time we have the details in place, you would feel that we do have full confidence, and we are serving the members of the public. Mr. Wichiwai, the former chief executive, and the state leader, Mr. C.Y. Leung, at the Greater Bay area, session said that as the entire Hangyunwai checkpoints are commissioned, the government should put in place the streamlined procedure and co-location arrangement at the WKS is a case in point.
In other words, there will be more and more such streamlining procedures being introduced at different BCPs. And Mrs. Carrie Lam then said that there is no alternative that can overturn the co-location arrangement, meaning that even Mrs. Lam has accepted such similar arrangements, which will be put in place in the future. And if there is no public consultation, the government can just suggest that there is public support, and then that it can be regarded as a precedent, such that there will be more and more such streamlined arrangements put in place in the future. And this will severely undermine the rights of Hong Kong people. So, Secretary, do you agree that there will be more and more such streamlined arrangements in the future? Can you give an undertaking to the public that there won't be other such streamlined arrangements being put in place in the future? Secretary, thank you. Well, just now Mr. Wu Chi-wai quoted from the former Chief Executive, Mr. C.Y. Leung, and also the incumbent Chief Executive, Mrs. Lam's words on the co-location arrangement. These two viewpoints were made in very different contexts. And I can reiterate, as we've said before, regarding the co-location arrangement which has been recently announced, it is the fruit of years of discussion and studies. As such, we don't believe that in the short term there will be a similar arrangement. So you cannot undertake that there won't be another such arrangement. I cannot give you any undertaking on behalf of any future administration. I do not have this power to do so. It's a matter of political ethics. But I'd like to explain to Mr. Wu, because I know Mr. Wu's concerns. I understand what's behind your concerns. I just want to explain that we have already set out very clearly in the past that this concern or this worry is not founded. Mr. H. Chen, I'd like to congratulate the Hong Kong SAR government. The LegCo is in recess in summer, and yet the administration has launched much publicity and also relied on the pro-establishment camp's support. And despite all your effort, you only have 50% support according to public opinion polls. I don't know whether it's worrisome for you. Well, but like Mrs. Carrie Lam said, even if you only have 50 or 35% support, there is no alternative to overturn this proposal anyway, and that is why the administration will not do any public consultation. But never mind about that. I think that this is a platform in this council to conduct public consultation. We should open up this platform for the public to come in and express their views. We can have a marathon meeting for days. And like today's paper suggests, well, by analogy, it's not the case of whether rape has actually occurred. It's just a legal point whether the act constitutes rape. Of course, some believe that it is convenient, it is comfortable, and it is really service that is hard to come by. But at the same time, there are other people who feel that this is rape. Well, the paper seems to suggest that for married couple, the act will not constitute rape, and Hong Kong, as part of China, as a result, will not regard it as rape. Well, even a moderate scholar would say that it's not that they do not support collocation arrangement, but according to your proposal, you're circumventing the basic law, and also the CIQ procedures, CIQ proposal, and they also cite Section 39 of the Public Order Ordinance. But the point is, the government is really is really playing deaf. Is it really that those scholars' proposals are not feasible in practice or in principle? Secretary. First of all, I'd like to say that it is entirely inappropriate to use this analogy of rape. The wording is inappropriate. You should consider the fact that after the XRL is commissioned, people of Hong Kong will be given another choice. And about the proposals floated by other scholars, as I mentioned in the beginning of this meeting, we discussed different alternatives before, just to illustrate the fact that the administration has been paying attention to different proposals and the views expressed by different sectors of the community, including scholars. We did look into different ideas, but the conclusion is, like I said just now, the best option is to implement collocation arrangement in West Kowloon Station. It should be implemented, and what I explained illustrates the reasons of the conclusion, and that is why the administration has spent so much time in studying the proposals. Next, Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. Thank you, Madam Chair. After the government announced the collocation arrangement proposal, I have noticed that for members opposing the proposal, they have resorted to different tactics. They have resorted to delay tactics and other means to try to block its passage in the Council. But I don't think that it is something that cannot be resolved, because from what I gather, the public's response is actually quite positive. If you choose not to accept, I think it's futile for the government to go on explaining to you. I think what is more important is to consider our way forward. The administration has proposed a three-step process in implementing the arrangement. I'd like to know whether you have a timetable for the three-step process. Which step will be taken when? And according to the government, at the press conference, an interdepartmental task force has been set up to discuss with the mainland authorities on emergency response and rescue issues. I want to know whether you have begun liaison with the mainland authorities, or when you will devise emergency response plans, and about CIQ clearance procedures. Do you have an estimate when the government will discuss specific details with the mainland authorities? Mr. Yun? Well, maybe I'll take the first question and I'll defer to the secretaries to answer the other questions. For the first and second steps of the three-step process, we hope to complete them by the end of this year, 2017. Following that, we will start step 3, and that is local legislation in Hong Kong. We hope that before the electrical enters into recess in 2018, we can complete the third step such that the XRL can be commissioned in the third quarter in 2018, together with the co-location arrangement implemented. Yes, Mr. Lee. Let me take Mr. Ma's question on how we liaise with the relevant units of the mainland in ironing out details of the arrangement. Similar to the Shenzhen Bay Port model, the different units and departments on both sides are forming task forces and holding meetings. So very soon, there will be joint meetings with the mainland authorities. Following the Shenzhen Bay Port model, there will be high-level meetings. The Deputy Mayor and also the Public Security Bureau were also involved. And there will also be working group meetings, task force meetings. And like Mr. Ma said, we're going to iron out details on different matters such as clearance procedures, handling of passengers. And there are also meetings about emergency response plans and other contingencies such as fire, terrorist attacks. And the SAR government has already begun internal discussion, and very soon we'll be liaising with the mainland counterparts. Well, I need to announce that I'll be strictly upholding the 3-minute speaking time rule. We have received 2 motions. I need to deal with the motions. So please confine yourself to 3 minutes. I'll need to stop you. The 3 minutes are up. Dr. Elizabeth Quat. For the opposition camp, the Pandems, they continue to demonize XRL and co-location arrangement for the sake of opposition, and they are actually wagging their tongue. They suggest that the mainland public security officers can come and arrest anyone, and you can't even go near West Kowloon Station. And just now, the other member used the word cession of land, and this is often cited by them, and they also use words like leasing land and ceding land to the mainland. I think that they are suggesting that Hong Kong is a sovereign, an independent state, and they are assuming that we are having a status on a par with the mainland. I don't think that I don't think LegCo should be used as a platform to advocate advocate the independence of Hong Kong. So these words should be avoided. We understand that the high-speed rail network has continued to expand in the mainland. We can now travel to different cities in the mainland, and by using XRL, we can reach different mainland cities. In the future, we may even be able to travel all the way to Central Asia. If we don't have XRL in Hong Kong, we will be a closed port and will be marginalized. Now, at the moment, some members from the opposition camp suggested there should be separate location of CIQ facilities. Now, taking it to be the case, how many cities can we travel directly from? How many cities in the mainland can we travel directly from Hong Kong? Secretary, without co-location arrangement. And I must stress that co-location is not something new. And I can read out from one of the LegCo papers. The objective is to ensure that the XRL's potential can be unleashed to enhance efficiency. And at the same time, the one country, two systems principle and the basic law should not be undermined. The administration will continue to discuss with the mainland authorities such that the co-location arrangement can be implemented when the XRL is commissioned. You can find similar descriptions in various papers submitted to the Legislative Council. That is why responding to members' suggestion, we need to have additional meetings during legislative recess to show the determination of the government, because we have a tight schedule. The XRL will be commissioned in the third quarter of 2018, and by then we must introduce the co-location arrangement.
A separate location is infeasible, only co-location. Mr. Orr, Madam Chair, I think under the basic law, this is formulated by Hong Kong government and is to ensure the freedom and ease of travel. I like to approach this from the ease of travel on the part of the people of Hong Kong. I was part of the site visit myself. I was very impressed because from the residents' point of view, through the co-location arrangement, they can travel on the XRL to and from the mainland with immense ease. Many residents would like to see this happen, and Hong Kong should not get bogged down, and Hong Kong should not be stuck in the current situation. I hope that the members will have regard to public sentiment, and they should not be irrational and go against the public opinions. Now, the opposition members are saying that the consultation wasn't done properly. I'd like to say that following the announcement of the co-location arrangement, the government has been listening to public opinions through different channels, and they've also attended legislative meetings to field questions. Now, for the opposition members, they're talking about consultation. Will you be listening to the views of the stakeholders? I do hope that you would be reaching out to different districts and listen to what the members of the public and also the stakeholders have to say in order to grasp fully their views to implement the co-location as soon as possible. What specific ideas do you have in mind on that score? Secretary, thanks very much, Mr. Orr, for the question. The SAR government has been attaching considerable importance to public opinions. Since co-location arrangement was floated, we have been absorbing views from people from all quarters. Since the announcement on the 5th of July, we have been listening to the views of different people from different quarters. We hope that we can heighten people's understanding of the whole arrangement, and where necessary, we would be prepared to explain in detail our arrangement. So this will go on. Mr. Prince Yuping, Madam Chair, paragraph 44 of the paper, the buildings will be maintained in accordance with the Hong Kong law, but the mainland, the mainland personnel will act in accordance with the mainland law. How can you ensure that employees from Hong Kong will not be flouting mainland law? Will there be any training provided to the employees? Now, if they violate the mainland laws in this area, how will the interests be protected? And how many workers will be working there from the mainland? And will you be fulfilling the safety requirements? Now, there will be 100,000 people, 100,000 trips that will be anticipated. Now, for CIQ procedures, what is the number of officers that will be required there? Right, SJ or Secretary? Yes, Secretary Chen. Thanks very much, Mr. Poon, for the question. that the relevant facilities and the buildings, they will be subject to Hong Kong law and Hong Kong requirements. For Hong Kong people working in the area, we have made it very clear that if they are in possession of the valid permit, if they are gaining access into the WKS for discharging the duties, if they are discharging the duties, other than acting in accordance with the cooperation arrangement, they will be observing the mainland law within the mainland, within the MPA. With regard to the clearance, I defer to Mr. Lee. In the area, we would have regard to the number of passenger trips in deciding on the complement of staff. We anticipate that there will be a few hundred people working there, and this is on the basis of our experience in other checkpoints in working out the number. The deployment of staff will be approved by the internal administration. Mr. Yu Siwei, Madam Chair, we have 26 kilometers in the Hong Kong section of the XRL, and this will be linked up with 30,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in the mainland. This is really standing Hong Kong in good stead. Now, people are traveling to Guangdong mainly for the short trip, and for long-haul journey, they will be taking planes. With the commissioning of the XRL, we will be radiating out to the second and third tier cities. People can be traveling to these cities using the XRL. Now, for these second and third tier cities, the residents can hop on the high-speed rail and find themselves in the West Kowloon station. Now, this is going to be beneficial to the tourism trade, and even for the transportation sector. Now, for these overseas visitors, they can use the XRL and travel to the preferred destinations. When the 3RS is commissioned in 2030, this will provide a really good opportunity. We visited the XRL, and we find that the problem lies with the green and orange area, and in between there is the yellow area, and that's the channel for the passengers, which is under the jurisdiction of Hong Kong. Now, this channel would be like the bridge, the Lorwood Bridge. There is a line drawn. Once you travel beyond the line, it will be the mainland area. Within the orange zone, it is within the jurisdiction of Hong Kong. If I may put this to the Secretary for Security, at the Lorwood Bridge, I mean, it's similar to the yellow zone in this XRL. Have there been cases in which the mainland personnel stepped over the line and made arrest of mainland people or indeed Hong Kong people? Mr. Lee. Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Yu, for the question. I think the best comparison is the Shenzhen Bay port area, and Mr. Yu talked about the Lowu checkpoint. The situation is there is a buffer zone on both sides of the line. Now, you can exit Hong Kong and you walk into the buffer zone before you step on the line. Now, to the south of the line is Hong Kong's jurisdiction. To the north, it is the mainland. There has never been any situations of cross-boundary enforcement of the law. Dr. Fernando Zhao, Madam Chair, as LegCo members, we do have the obligation to make sure that the protection under the Basic Law will not be chipped away. The Basic Law provides a legal framework for us to implement one country, two systems. Why two systems? Because our system is vastly different from the mainland's in terms of freedom of speech, protection of freedoms, personal safety, and freedom of travel, and so on. That this arrangement, co-location arrangement, is for the sake of convenience. We may have the Basic Law protection under BL 18. It says that the mainland laws will not be implemented within Hong Kong, but this is an exception there. Within Hong Kong, an area is carved out for the enforcement of mainland laws. This is depriving the people of Hong Kong of the Basic Law protection. This erosion of rights can be trialed in the name of convenience. In future, we may see this in other ports. We may see this in other checkpoints. And the mainland or the Hong Kong SL government will cite other reasons other than convenience. Would they be replicating this arrangement elsewhere and deprive us of the Basic Law protection once again? Mr. Secretary, will you be able to give us a guarantee to the people of Hong Kong this is an exception of an exception? Going forward, there will not be more of the same going in future, and carve out certain areas in Hong Kong that will deprive us of the Basic Law protection. SJ, thanks very much, Dr. Zhang. There are 2 points I'd like to clarify here. First of all, this co-location arrangement, the passengers complete the clearance procedures, and the right will not be any different from a separation of location. We have to get this out of the way to start with. Second, with this co-location arrangement, Dr. Zhang raised all these problems, and other members also raised the other concerns that we might see more of the same in future. We have repeatedly explained that this arrangement is purely to deal with the co-location arrangement at the West Kowloon Station. The members may notice that there are suggestions in the community out there that we should follow the Shenzhen Bay port area and make sure that this is only specifically for this purpose. Would that not be more of the same, carve out an area from Hong Kong? Well, you can follow up on another occasion. Mr. Frankie Yik, at the House Committee, Madam Chair, I've already reported to members the telephone poll results. Mr. Xiu already said that at the second poll, whether co-location is important to the XRL, whether they agree with the Shenzhen Bay port model, the support level has increased by 3%. We polled the people again about this co-location arrangement, and we asked them whether there will be any negative impact from the arrangement. Now we have 43%, 13.7% feel that they don't have any particular views. Now 43% on either side. Now 43% versus 13.7%. They express concerns. We asked them whether they accept this government proposal. 35.1% of the people polled accept the arrangement. Now we consolidated the figure about we have an additional 20%. Now we asked whether people are in favor of this model. The split is 30% in favor. So I would just like to bring members up to date on the figures. The Liberal Party has always been in support of this XRL, And we also feel that this co-location arrangement is an acceptable model. Right? Next.
Dr. Kenneth Leung. Dr. Kenneth Leung isn't here, so Mr. Leung Yu-chung. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just saw Mr. Frank Chan, when answering members' question, said that if co-location arrangement is put in place at Shenzhen North and Futian Station, it will be unreasonable because these two stations are already in operation. That may be the case in today's situation because the stations are already in operation. But I don't know whether the Secretary knows when these two stations came into operation. Maybe back then you were not the Secretary, but you must know for Shenzhen North it was commissioned on the 20th of December 2011, and that's when the Hong Kong Shenzhen Guangdong through train was commissioned. As for the Futian station, was commissioned in 2015. And what about our section? We were supposed to have it commissioned in May 2015, but according to the program to complete at most 2014, you should have come up with a co-location arrangement proposal for discussion by the public. And if we had the discussion then, it might not be very unreasonable to have the co-location facilities in the two stations. Now it may be unreasonable because the XRL will be commissioned in less than a year's time, and that is why you have floated this proposal that goes against the basic law, and you're forcing us to accept it. So you rely on having a majority in the council, and you, in order to secure passage of the proposal. And I think that this is dereliction of duty. And that is why you resort to forcing us to accept this co-location arrangement proposal, which consists of land cession. And I think that you should apologize to the public. Secretary, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. Now, Mr. Leung referred to the chronology of events and some assumptions. I need to make it clear that for co-location arrangement or separate co-location of CIQ facilities, etc., I don't think any such proposal can be decided unilaterally by one party. So definitely, two sovereign states will need to decide on this. But it was supposed to be commissioned in 2015. So the proposal should have been floated for discussion in 2014 before it was commissioned in 2015. Now we're in 2017. Can't you apologize for your dereliction of duty? Mr. Leung can refer to the paper. On many occasions, the administration explained very clearly to the Council that when it comes to clearance procedures, it's a very complex and sensitive issue requiring careful consideration. What was the original scheduled date of commissioning? I'm sorry, your time is up. You can pursue this line of questioning on other occasions. Mr. Jeremy Tam. In Guangzhou, the largest high-speed rail station is Guangzhou South Station, and that's the connecting point for the Hong Kong section of the XRL. I want to know whether this is a crucial point when it comes to efficiency of the XRL. Secretary, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tam, for your question. Mr. Tam made some remarks on the internet. I read your remarks. I'm not asking about these. Guangzhou South Station is the terminus for our Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong intercity rail. But it depends on whether a passenger needs to go to Guangzhou South Station. Well, Madam Chair, I'm not asking this. This is not the question that I asked. Well, just pause here. Please repeat your question No need, because he is just talking about something else. Well, when it comes to the 13th five-year plan, the cooperation or the framework agreement was signed, and for Guangdong, the Guangzhou and Guangzhou South Station would be renovated for connection with the 9 railway lines, such that it will become a hub. And I have been talking about Guangzhou South Station. It will be positioned as the passenger hub. So for Guangzhou South Station, the overhaul will be completed in 2022. Meaning that Guangzhou South and Guangzhou Railway Station will be the central point of the railway network in that part of China. Have you considered the impact on this section of the rail? What will be the reduction in number of passengers? If you haven't conducted such a study, explain the reason why. I think you need to consider the strategy of railway network development in the mainland. It is clear from the mainland's development strategy is to have 4 vertical and 4 horizontal railways, one of which is the Beijing-Guangzhou passenger line, and then in 2008 it was expanded to 8 verticals and 8 horizontals layout with additional railway lines. Well, please let them finish. After redevelopment of Guangzhou Station, very frankly, on the point of impact on the overall flow of passengers, I have 2 points to make. First, let's say that with a bigger pie, the capacity will be increased. Well, Mr. Tam may be suggesting that the number of passengers will be decreased, but, well, please don't start a dialogue. I think we can follow up on this issue at other meetings. We have 2 more members waiting for the first round. Ms. Eunice Yong. Madam Chair, I think that the collocation arrangement can enhance the maximum efficiency of the XRL when it comes to convenience of the passengers and the saving of time. I think that this is the what we want. I have a question. I understand that for the cooperation arrangement there will be 2 aspects. About matters outside the purview of the Hong Kong side and also the mainland side. And apart from these 2, I want to know whether, apart from these 2, for other matters, it will come under the management of, or come under the jurisdiction of the mainland. I don't think it's clear here. And I want to know when you will announce the details of the arrangement. Who will take the question? Mr. Yun. Thank you, Ms. Yong, for your question. I think that for the first part of your question is about the division of work. There will be clear provisions relating to the cooperation agreement or cooperation arrangement in this regard. In short, for the MPA, apart from the 6 matters set out in the paper, the mainland laws will apply and the mainland authorities will exercise its jurisdiction. Details will be finalized in due course. Second point, there are 3 major principles. It should be in line with the basic law, the 1 country, 2 systems principle, and the security of Hong Kong should not be compromised. And under these 3 principles, we implement the collocation arrangement in the West Kowloon Station. I think the paper already sets out all the major points. We have considered different issues operationally and legally, and we believe that this arrangement, first of all, doesn't contravene the basic law. It doesn't contravene one country, two systems principle, and it is a feasible option that can be implemented. And as I explained in the beginning, it is necessary to implement co-location arrangement. Next, Mr. Felix Chung. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Yun just now mentioned that for the MPA, this will be an area leased to the mainland. Article 7 of the Basic Law suggests that all resources and land in Hong Kong belongs to the mainland, and the Hong Kong SAR government shall be responsible for the management, use, and development, and for their lease or grant to individuals, etc. So it is true that the government can lease the land and resources to other parties, but it doesn't state that it can be leased to the mainland. So on what basis does the government make this arrangement? And I'm concerned that there may be another judicial review. Although Secretary is confident that the judicial review will be tackled, why are you still confident that all the procedures can be completed before the third quarter of next year? I need to pause here. We still have Mr. Christopher Cheung. He has pressed the button, and I would like to give time for everyone to speak. Yes? Well, I didn't press the button, but your name is here, and we need to deal with emotions too. And we may go beyond 6:30, so please stay behind for a bit. And after Mr. Felix Chung, there are other members who have pressed the buttons for a second round. 4 members. Each will be given 1 minute, and then I'll deal with the motions. You've raised your hand. 1 minute for everybody in the second round. And then after the Secretary has responded to Mr. Felix Chung's question first. Responding to Mr. Chung's question, we have been discussing with the mainland authorities on the legal justification of Article 7 of the Basic Law. If indeed there were issues raised, these issues would be dealt with much earlier. And later on, there will be contracts and agreements signed on the right to use the land and the venues. And the signing parties or to the contract may not be as high level as the sovereign state, and there are ways to get around it. We're not concerned, or we're not too worried about the issues that may arise from Article 7 of the Basic Law. About your second question, JRs, we of course cannot control how many JR cases there will be. We respect the citizens' right to file a judicial review, but we believe that as far as the design and our legal system is concerned, we believe that these cases can be dealt with in an appropriate manner. Of course, it depends on the grounds of filing a judicial review. At the moment, already 4 cases have been filed. We cannot discuss the specific details here, but we will work in accordance with all the procedures. I'll give you 3 minutes. You can finish off your 20 seconds left. Just now, the Secretary said that it may not be the state itself that signs the contract. So what unit would be a signing party? Because there will be enforcement of mainland laws in the MPA and CIQ procedures. So who will be the signing party? Well, for Shenzhen Bayport, it's the Shenzhen municipal government. So at the moment, we have not finalized the signatories to the contract, but my understanding is that it will not be at the level of a sovereign state. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, so altogether, Mr. Andrew Wan, Claudia Mo, Tanya Chen, Wu Chi Wai, etc. I'm sorry, I need to deal with the 2 motions. Well, I promise that there will be a second round, 1 minute for each member. Mr. Andrew Wan, very briefly, I believe that the SAR government, when it comes to public consultation or explanation, things are not clear. Last time, you talked about the examples of US, Canada, and UK and France, and you explained about the different jurisdictions. And Mr. John Lee just now mentioned that without collocation arrangement, there will be more non-refoulement claims. I want to know the logic. Well, without the collocation arrangement, does it mean that, with collocation arrangement, there will be fewer cases of claimants coming from other routes?
When there is overlapping jurisdictions, we have to deal with any non-refoulement claimants. In 2015-16, we have 6,000 non-Chinese non-refoulement claimants. And all right, Ms. Claudia Mo, if I may put this to the administration regarding this co-location arrangement, now do you think that this is a perfect arrangement without any flaws, and you don't have a guilty conscience, and you have a clear conscience towards history and also the people of Hong Kong? SJ, well, this is a really emotive and provocative question, but I can answer the question in a calm way. We have been trying our level best, and nothing is perfect in the world. But after so many years, this is a proposal that we worked our level best for, and we have a clear conscience. I can speak on behalf of my colleagues. You have a clear conscience towards history, yes, towards history, towards the council, and towards the people of Hong Kong. Ms. Tanya Chen, yes, I've got this OZP, outline zoning plan, about this West Kowloon Station, and the uses. It mentioned railway station, a transport terminus and station. And when I'm looking at this law woman canto, there is particular usage, boundary crossing facility. Now, when I'm looking at the OZP about the XRL, there is no mention of that. You have to go back to the town planning board. If you have these facilities and they have not been approved, what procedure do you have to go through? Right? Which secretary? Madam Chair. On this question by Ms. Tanya Chen, when we seek funding, we made it very clear that there is a CIQ facility in this West Kowloon Station. Well, there is nothing in this document, right? There will be further opportunity to follow up. And Mr. Wu Chi-wai, when the Secretary responded to my question, he said that he couldn't deny that this streamlined arrangement will not be the last. Now, if this is the case, why is it that during the consultation process you will not be categorically telling people this possibility and let people make the decision that they can decide whether they accept the convenience of co-location and also whether they accept this possibility of more of the same going forward? Secretary, I hope Mr. Wu will not twist my reply. I didn't say what Mr. Wu said. I said that this co-location arrangement is purely to facilitate the XRL, and this is not the characterization that I used. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, Madam Chair, I said that a criminal has traveled down to Hong Kong on the XRL, and he is picked up on the Hong Kong side. How are we going to deal with him? Well, it depends on whether he is a Hong Kong person. If he's a Hong Kong person who has committed offences in the mainland and he's entered into Hong Kong, we don't have the surrender of fugitives arrangement. He will be in Hong Kong committing mainland offence. If he is a non-Hong Kong resident, we can refuse him entry and he will be taken back to the mainland. That's how it will be dealt with. All right, then we move on to the two motions. I have received two motions, one by Ms. Claudia Mo, the other one by Mr. Ben Chan and Mr. Jeffrey Lam. I will be dealing with them in the order that they were submitted. If there is no objection, we will proceed with these two motions. The first one is by Ms. Claudia Mo. We'll put this to the vote. With those in favour, please raise their hands. You'd like to call a division? Those against? Ring the bell. We have 10 minutes left in the extension. Why don't we ring the bell? All right, ring the bell. All right, then let's ring the bell.
快啲啊，秘書。已經過咗一段時，過咗15秒㗎啦。頭先你哋喺度傾嘅時候。我都會諮詢下各位委員。
Let me put this to members. I think we can have a bit of discussion. I'm open. Keep my options open. Some of them don't have the paper. Well, they have been tabled. I'm talking about those in front of the television, Madam Chair. Why don't you allow me to read it out? I did ask you to read it out. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. You're talking over one another. You were talking over Mr. Wan. This joint meeting urges the administration to reconsider the co-location arrangement for the XRL. The government should bring forward other alternative models as mentioned in the paper for as alternative and put them out to public consultation and solicit views from the members of the public. Mr. Hui, there was a suggestion of a public hearing regarding the co-location arrangement. I am proposing this now formally. Right, I heard what you have to say. I will consult members today.
開始嘅時候10秒鐘撳。請大家注意咧，頭先嗰個鐘。
Please note that there was a delay of about 7 to 8 seconds. I'll be putting this to the vote by about 46 or 47 seconds. So the bell was a little bit late.
好。
All right, then, members, please proceed to vote. Well, the bell is not working properly. Please proceed to vote. Has anybody not taken the vote? Will members please check their votes? All right, voting now ends. Well, let's display the results. 14 in favor and 28 against. No abstention. The question has been negatived. Moving on next to the motion jointly moved by Mr. Ben Chen and Mr. Jeffrey Lam. I call a division, so the bell will no. Right, we don't have to sound the bell. Will members please proceed to vote? What? Don't we need the bell? Because this is the same motion. Right, we checked with the Secretariat. For the second round of voting, we can do without the bell. Will members please proceed to vote? With those in favor, please raise their hands. Can they press the button? Yes, please. For those who are in favor, please press the button. Those in favor of the motion moved by Mr. Ben Chen and Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Those against also, please press the button. And those who abstain, please proceed. The device is acting up a little bit. Have you all done that? Please check the votes. Voting now ends, and I display the results. 29 for, 13 against, no abstention. I declare that the motion is carried. Thank you all very much for coming to this meeting and staying till the very last minute. Members suggested a public hearing. I'll be consulting members and let you know about the arrangement. Thank you all very much.